Hey.
Hello, and welcome back to Night Shift with Andrea Up Late. We are a true crime podcast that airs live every Tuesday night at 8, 7 Central or somewhere about there on the Andrea Up Late YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Instagram at Andrea Up Late. Joining us tonight is my co-host, I almost said BC, Brian Sanders.
That's right.
Also of the Disruptors podcast with Brian Sanders.
Yes.
How you doing tonight?
Wonderful. We are right around 72 hours or something from Halloween, or 48.
48. Yeah, it's Thursday.
That's right.
So about 48 hours from now, we will be in our costumes.
That's right.
If you follow us on Instagram, you may have seen I threw a story up. Hey, David J and Davey in the chats, I threw a story up that just showed a little bit of like a blonde wig, a black wig, and a mustache. You can't really tell the length of the wigs. Are they short? Are they long? Are they one of each? Who's going to wear which or any of that stuff? But if you are new to this show, we also like to do fun stuff. So we did a contest last year. Let's not worry about how long it took, but just know that Brittany Faulkner won it, and she got a shirt ordered today for free. But this time it'll be a lot quicker turnaround. So if you can hop in the chats, it can be here tonight on the show. It can be send me a message on Instagram. You can email it to andreauplate@yahoo.com. Did you know that was a thing?
That's what did you just say?
Yeah. andreauplate@yahoo. So finally you can email if you don't have Instagram or social media. But either way, send us what you think we're going to be. And maybe I'll tease like a little bit more of our costumes to make it a little more possible. But last year we set the bar high, and Brian was Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs, like naked woman suit and all, and I was the girl in the well. So like I said, Brittany Faulkner guessed that first correctly last year, and so she got a free t-shirt. You guys can as well from our sponsor, Illicit Apparel Daily Threads, and we will definitely talk much more about them later on in the show. We are going to get started here in a second. Tonight is going to be fun, y'all. It's much different than our normal true crime podcast. Usually we're pretty serious and cover some pretty hard-hitting cases. Tonight, I'm just going to read. I didn't do my big homework where I basically do a research paper every week and write all this stuff down. I just printed some sources, and I'm just going to kind of cover like broad strokes some of these cases that occurred on Halloween Day over the years. So any of the Halloween murders, there's quite a few of them. I picked, I think, 5 or 6 that I'm just going to read you like excerpts about. And we're going to get down to one called the actual Halloween killer or the Halloween murders, actually what it was deemed back in the time that it happened a long time ago. So in the 70s. So we're going to talk about that stuff. And then we're just going to kind of have fun. So I may or may not even drop this one to Spotify. But we're going to have people call in. So if you have any kind of ghost story, paranormal, spooky, scary, did you work, I worked in a hospital for many years, and there are always wild stories in hospitals. There's people who live near potential like battlefields from wars, and they'll say certain things they see, or cemetery stuff, weird old building stuff, anything, whatever. It doesn't even have to be a ghost. But if you have any kind of experience with anything that you find a little strange or a little spooky, tonight's the night. So like I said, we're going to banter and enjoy that. So after I read you a couple of these stories of murders that took place on Halloween, then I want you guys to call in. I'll throw the number on the screen. And we'd love to talk to you. So keep that in mind. Keep your phone near you. While I'm telling you these stories, be thinking of your stories. Even if it didn't happen to you, if it happened to a friend of yours. Make up a really good one. We don't even have to know if it's real or not. Okay. Yeah. And let us know, and we will talk to y'all about it. So without further ado, I'm going to get started here. Again, like I said, these are just things that I printed off, and I'm reading directly from the source. Something I never ever do. But tonight's the night for that. It's a little bit easier too. So we're going to start with the murder of Tadea Benz. So check this out. Johnny Frank Garrett was accused of murdering a Catholic nun. This is terrible. Who lived across the street from him. So this would have been on the morning of Halloween in 1981. Garrett was 17 years old at the time. By the way, that was the age of majority for criminal responsibility in Texas at that time. So according to the prosecution, that morning Garrett raped, strangled, and killed the 76-year-old sister, Tadea Benz, in the St. Francis convent. He was arrested just over a week later. He was charged with murder. He actually was charged with murder and sentenced to the death penalty. The Pope at the time, I think it was John Paul II. Yeah, Pope John Paul II asked for clemency, but Governor of Texas, Ann Richards, did give like a temporary reprieve, but when it came back to the board to kind of reassess, they carried out with that death sentence. And I believe he was only 27 or 28 when he was executed for that murder. There was talk of multiple personalities, childhood trauma, all these kinds of things, but that was a terrible one. So that's the first of our Halloween murders that we're talking about. So talk about a love triangle. What say you about this one, Brian? Because you've never heard this before, so listen up. The trick-or-treat murder. On Halloween night of 1957, Peter and Betty Fabiano were preparing to go to bed when their doorbell rang. It was after 11 o'clock at night, and they thought it was a little bit late at this point for kids to still be asking for candy, right? But they were still awake, and they still had candy left, and so Peter answered the door. When he did, he had his candy bowl in his hands, and he didn't see a child, but there was a grown woman there. She was wearing a mask at the front door. She had a paper bag like over her hand, and she was pointing it at Peter, at his chest. She shot him, and then she sped off. Okay, so Betty jumps out of bed. She had already gone upstairs. She jumps out of bed. She runs downstairs. She found her husband lying on the floor, covered in blood. She called for an ambulance. He died before they even could get to the hospital. And they say that at first authorities thought that this was just a random murder. Peter was a hairdresser, and they didn't think that he had any enemies. He was a really nice guy, no shady backstories or anything like that. So they began investigating a little bit deeper, and through quite a series of events, they found out about this woman named Joan Revelle, who was 40 years old, and she had once actually been employed at Peter's salon. So the police became suspicious when she was starting to lie about where she was on the night of the murder. So they had to release her. They didn't have any evidence initially against her, but they kind of kept their tabs on her. So the following month, there was an anonymous call to the police that directed them to a rented locker in a department store. We cover a lot of cases with bizarre rented lockers that people find out about later on, right? And when they went to this rented locker, they found a .38 revolver. This would be the same gun that had been used in the murder, okay? The locker was being rented by a woman named Goldine Pizer. She confessed that Joan Rabel, the lady that we just mentioned a minute ago, right, was her lover. Her lover. She also confessed that Joan lied to her about Peter. She said that she had told this woman that he was a wife beater and he was an abuser. He was an evil man and he deserved to die. So these two are carrying out a love affair. This Joan and Goldine. Goldine is the one who was tied back to that gun, right? But Joan was the one they were looking at first. So these two are lovers. Goldine is the one that pulled the trigger, but she did so at the behest of Joan, who had said she used to work for this man and he was a terrible guy and an abuser. So because Goldine believed all of this, she agreed that she would help, and she eventually confessed that it was her who killed Peter. So an investigation then discovers that Joan had been having an affair with Peter's wife, Betty. So Joan convinces Goldine to kill Peter. So those two are together, and she's got quite an effect if she can convince this woman to. I'm wearing giant pants right now. I don't know. Is that what you just? You guys cannot see under the camera. So Joan has the amount of, influence or gravity with Goldine that she convinces her to kill this man. But then we find out at the same time she's having an affair with Peter's wife, Betty. So Joan and Betty are together in a relationship, and she just wanted to get rid of Peter. So it was never true that he was this abuser or bad man or anything like that. She used that story to persuade Goldine to kill this guy, right? So Joan pled not guilty. Goldine pled insanity. They both agreed to take a plea deal for second-degree murder for life in prison, and that's what they got. And Betty was never charged with anything.
Oh.
They couldn't prove she was at all complicit in this. Isn't that a weird one? But that was another Halloween one, right?
And that was when? That was in the 80s too?
That was like 1957.
Oh,
like quite, that's scandalous for now.
That
much
is.
less back in 57. My goodness. All right. I'm barely going to touch on this one. So in terms of being Halloween, let's see. This would have been 1979, Halloween of 1979. If you're not familiar with Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris, well, I'm not going to I'm not going to talk about it. I will never cover it. You can, I always say never. I will never cover this case. It's the case of the. Don't get it mistaken. It's not the toy box killers. This is the tool, TOOL, toolbox killers. And I will never, ever, ever cover it. But in saying this is a case that when they just played some audio from what these men had, from some of the things they had done, jurors, people were rushing out of the courtroom, vomiting. Someone committed suicide later. It's absolutely heinous. But in saying that to you, on Halloween of 1979 is when their last victim succumbed, and then they were caught after this. So they were actually charged and convicted after their last victim, which was Shirley Lynette Ledford in 1979. She was 16 years old. She was abducted as she stood outside a gas station. She was hitchhiking home from a Halloween party in a suburb of Los Angeles. They believe that she accepted a ride from Bittaker and Norris because she actually recognized Bittaker, as he was known to have frequented the McDonald's where she had a part-time job. So she gets in their van and very horrible things happen, and they kill her, dump her on the side of the road. But she was their last victim before they were actually caught. So that's the only good thing there.
Yeah, I read about them when I was in college. But one of them say John Douglas's books, and absolutely horrible. It's
probably one of there's a lot that are very tough to read about and learn about. That's probably one that I don't know that I have any that I wish I'd have just never found out about.
Yeah.
That's one that I wish I had never known about. And I say that not for like salacious sense, but like legitimately, I would be fine not ever knowing anything about that. All right. So I'm going to tell you about 2 more Halloween murders, and then I want you guys to, give us a call, or else we're just shutting this down early. Did you reach out to your
I sent some messages
okay.
out. We'll see what happens.
All righty. So Ronald Sisman invited his girlfriend. Again, I'm reading straight from the source here, guys. Okay. So this information came from the website Medium. It's a great website, but take everything with a grain of salt, but it's a pretty great website. So Ronald Sisman had invited his girlfriend, Elizabeth Platzman, over to his place for a photo shoot. He was a photographer. This isn't a weird thing where usually that goes sideways in these cases. They were enjoying wine, but then a group of masked individuals showed up at the door. Ronald first told Elizabeth that they should just ignore them, but the knocking turned to banging, and so he relented and opened the door. The bodies then of 19-year-old Elizabeth Platzman and 39-year-old Ronald Sisman were found early Saturday morning at Sisman's duplex on West 22nd Street in Manhattan near Greenwich Village. So this was his residence, and he had 2 photography businesses there. This case is actually unsolved, which if you listen to Night Shift, you know that that's kind of my jam. I prefer the unsolved cases because I like for us to talk theories and to kind of figure out the puzzle of it. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about this because this may be one that we cover in an actual show one night, an actual Night Shift episode. But the couple had been severely beaten, and then they were shot in the back of their heads, close range, execution style. At some point, his place had been completely ransacked by the killers. Furniture had been ripped, things torn apart, things flipped over. This kind of led investigators to try to go down one of 2 paths. Was it because the killers wanted the killers wanted to find something? Were they there to find something that Ronald had, or was it in an effort to, mislead investigators? So they say that there was so much chaos in the apartment, investigators couldn't even kind of walk through without stepping on something. So both of their faces and bodies were covered in a ton of bruises, and it looked like they had experienced a very long beating before their deaths. There had been no forced entry, so law enforcement initially suspected that maybe they, or at least Ronald, knew the killers. But one of the missing items from the scene was a .25 caliber pistol that was registered to Ronald. It could have been the murder weapon used on the victims. And then the only other missing items were both of their driver's licenses, which is interesting because it's at a location, it's at a home that belongs to him. So it's not, that wouldn't deter them identifying or delay them identifying the couple. What do you think? Go for it.
Well, sometimes you do that to say that it wasn't going to be a murder necessarily. Starts out as a robbery. You take IDs or wallets and then say, that way I know where you live.
Yeah, but they didn't take the wallet. They didn't take money.
Yeah.
Just like specifically the one gun and the two license. So there have been some claims that Ronald had been involved in drugs. Nothing was really proven there. They did find like trace amounts of cocaine there. So then some will speculate that maybe he was just a small-time dealer with some of his buddies, really just kind of supplying his friends some drugs. Or maybe he had a lot more, and that's why trace amounts were left because a lot of cocaine was taken during that robbery, if that was in fact the motive. So, excuse me. The drug angle came from when this woman, Melanie Haller, she was an actress who had worked with Ronald. She accused him that he tried to force her to take drugs, and when she refused, he became belligerent. This was later dropped, though, because she would no longer cooperate with the authorities, the lady who claims this. So don't run your trap if you're not going to follow up, right? So they still started to believe that drugs were involved, and they wondered if maybe Ronald potentially owed a dealer some money, but nothing, like I said, had been taken from his place. So all of this just seemed odd. There's another accusation by Melanie Haller, the same one that I just spoke of, that surfaced later. She'd also made an accusation against a film producer in Long Island. And in that case, she also said that he had attempted to drug her and those charges had been dropped. So she's just running around spewing her little lies. So police then had an informant call them with a bizarre tale, okay? He said that someone he knew had predicted the murder weeks prior. Now, we're not talking a psychic. We're not talking one of these kinds of things. He said that this mysterious fortune teller was actually someone who was in prison at the time. None other than David Berkowitz, or the son of Sam killer.
Oh.
Okay. So if you're not familiar, the son of Sam, excuse me, my neck is killing me. From 1976 to 1977, 6 people were fatally shot, 7 others seriously wounded. Police were receiving letters kind of to toy with them, little cat and mouse type letters to the station. And eventually David Berkowitz was arrested, and he had been deemed the son of Sam. The informant told police that a couple weeks before the murder, David Berkowitz told him that his, quote, cult was going to torture and perform a ritual killing on Halloween, and he described it as a photographer's residence near Greenwich Village. So this was about 2 weeks before their death. After the ritual, they would kill the occupants, clean the residence of any incriminating evidence against the cult. David Berkowitz elaborated that Ronald, so the photographer, right? The victim that was the photographer, had a snuff video of one of the Son of Sam killings. That would shed light on the cult and make people rethink that David had acted alone. So this informant is saying that David Berkowitz called him and said all of this, and that Berkowitz said that Ronald Sisman had been hired by the cult to record the video, but they hadn't told him what the film was about beforehand. So after it was finished, he didn't seem happy at what he'd been a part of. I'm not sure, why would you just hire somebody to film a snuff film and just hope they keep their mouth shut? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
The cult had heard rumors that he was in trouble for drug dealing and that he might use the video as leverage to get a deal. So the authorities did, in fact, contact David Berkowitz. He was able to give a very accurate description. So get this. So as soon as we might start thinking this person who's calling in is a wackadoodle making all of this up, and David Berkowitz said none of this. When they called David Berkowitz or get in contact with him, as he was already imprisoned, he gave a very accurate description of Ronald Sisman's residence. Those closest to Ronald said that he had never met Berkowitz and wasn't involved in a satanic cult, but I'm not sure how they would know if he had or hadn't met him, right?
Yeah.
One fact from the scene that could go a long way in supporting what David Berkowitz says that the cult killed them was the fact that their licenses were stolen, and this has happened in other cult killings where they take personal identifying objects to prove they got the right person or just even simply as part of their ritual. Mm-hmm. To this day, no one's been arrested for that murder. Now, if you start reading into that double murder there with those two, this one is one that's kind of interesting in the sense of the rabbit holes you go down. So there are a lot of different theories in that. A lot of kind of weird stuff going on with that. And of course, if you start getting into the Son of Sam angle, I don't know, but call David Berkowitz. He's still alive. He's in prison up in New York. I think he was denied parole this past May. So
I've never read much about him being involved in a cult or.
Well, that was some of the claim for a little while.
Okay.
That was some claim. And then there's claim back and forth on whether or not he acted alone. I think the biggest takeaway there is that were the letters.
Yeah.
Like him toying with officers and sending all those letters. We're gonna, I will engage the chats a little bit here since we're not doing a traditional show tonight. But again, this is a live YouTube show. So we have friends in the chats. Anyone can join. It's free. You just log into a YouTube account, create one if you don't have one. Again, it doesn't cost a dime. And when we are live, you can type in the chats, talk amongst yourselves, each other, ask us questions. And we usually start engaging with those at the end of the show. But again, we're not covering one big case today. So we have a friend in the chats, Sillymander 2.0 says, BC or Brian, when you interrogated people, so I'll let that detail out. Brian is a retired homicide lieutenant, okay? When you interrogated people, did you just use a lot of ahs and and ahas and yes until they went mad thinking you knew everything and then they confessed? Because that would work on me. Yeah, actually it would.
I'll give a little secret.
That you're not afraid of an awkward silence?
I'm definitely not afraid of an awkward silence. The running joke used to be that I would talk so much, like 20 minutes straight, telling stories and just rambling on, that people would just like, look, get me out of here.
And they would confess.
Yeah. But all jokes aside, yes, there's nothing wrong with asking a question, counting to 10, and staying quiet. And eventually they'll say something.
It's good with teenagers too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Okay. This will be the last story that we talk about tonight. Probably one of the most famous when you look at Halloween murders. So I'm going to read this again straight from the source, and this source is just one source, which, by the way, please know that whenever we cover a case, it's never just one source. This is called thestatesman.com. Okay. So let's see here. All right. So in 1975, I believe is when this occurred. So after a dinner with friends, Ronald O'Brien was still dressed in his white optician's lab coat that he wore at work, and his neighbor friend, Jim Bates, headed out for an early evening of trick-or-treating with their children. It was kind of raining, and they had 3 children between them. His buddy Bates had a son, and Ronald O'Brien had 2 children, Timothy and a 5-year-old girl named Elizabeth, okay? So Timothy, I believe, was 7 or 8 at the time. At one of the homes they visited, no one answered the door. While the children ran ahead to the next house, Ronald O'Brien stayed behind. So they go, right? The kids knock, nobody answers. The kids kind of run up ahead. Dad stays back. When they ran ahead to the next house, He eventually caught up to the group, and he was holding several giant pixie sticks. So, the big pixie sticks. They're not kind of like they are now, the big plastic tubes, but they are still bigger than the original. It's like the little straw filled with the sweet powder. So he's got all of these big pixie sticks, and he says to his buddy Bates, he says, you must have some rich neighbors, to make it look like, it now appears that he had gotten these giant pixie sticks from a neighbor to give to the kids. He gave one out to each of the 3 children that were with them. They go back home, and Timothy, Ronald O'Brien's son Timothy, asks to eat some of his candy before bed. He selects, probably at his dad's urging, I would say, the pixie sticks. He couldn't seem to get the powder into his mouth. If you've ever eaten a pixie stick, it can get immediately, your spit gets on it, it gets wet, and it won't come out of that straw. So his dad graciously just rolled that straw between his 2 palms to loosen it, and then poured the candy into his son's mouth. Once his son had eaten the candy, he complained that it tasted bitter. His dad then gave him some Kool-Aid to wash the bitter taste out. Timothy began vomiting almost immediately. Within minutes, he was convulsing. His father calls an ambulance. So Bill Lanier was the detective with the Pasadena Police Department, but he had been there for less than a year. In fact, this was his first, what you're going to find out, murder investigation. And so this article kind of goes into interviewing that detective and just kind of like his thoughts on the case, even that many years later. It says, now retired and living in Louisiana, Lanier remembers the case vividly, beginning with his arrival at the hospital. Timothy was dead on arrival. So little Timothy eats this pixie stick, immediately vomits, convulses, and dies before he can get to the hospital. So immediately Lanier goes to work in interviewing the members of the O'Brien family. Now there was a mom. Again, there was the 5-year-old sister. So Ronald O'Brien, 2 weeks earlier, had celebrated his 30th birthday. They say that he was a big guy. He talked softly, almost feminine. He had a real kind of hangdog look, the detective recalled. He wasn't crying or bawling or anything of the sort, but there was no reason for me to believe he was involved. Lanier and several other Pasadena detectives quickly fanned out, recovering 4 other pixie sticks. Okay? One had been clutched in the hand of a child who had fallen asleep after failing to open the straw, which was stapled shut. That's not the way pixie sticks come, you guys. Others were recovered from the Bates children and Timothy's sister, who had also yet to eat them. You guys, so this man had given pixie sticks out to his friend's kid, both of his children, and other children. And so these kids had gone to bed holding these but had not eaten them. Somehow the only child that ingested one was Timothy, his son. Lab tests showed that the top 2 inches of each straw had been packed with fatal doses of cyanide. So over the next couple of days, police are trying to pin down the house where O'Brien had received the poison candy, right? Because he comes back saying, man, you've got some rich neighbors. Look at these giant candies they gave us. So Ronald O'Brien has, they say, oddly imprecise recollection. We talk about this often, that people have very big detail when it doesn't pertain to what they're potentially going to be charged with, but all of a sudden amnesia sets in whenever you talk about the direct event at hand. So they say that at first he kept saying, I don't know what home I got them from. And then I don't know which street. But they only trick or treated on 2 streets. Then he said he didn't see the person. He said, I don't know. All I could see was an arm. So they say after methodically walking up and down the neighborhood several times with the cops, finally Ronald O'Brien directed them to a house. It was owned by a man named Courtney Melvin, who Ronald O'Brien said was the person who gave him the deadly pixie sticks. Bad choice, Ronald O'Brien, says this detective later on in a recent interview, because it turned out that man, Melvin, had not gotten home until nearly 11 p.m. on Halloween. The guy had an ironclad alibi. He was a shift worker, a supervisor at a hobby airport, and he had more than 200 people who could vouch for him because he was at work that day. So meanwhile, the detectives started uncovering more information that was becoming troubling about Ronald O'Brien, little Timothy's dad. He'd recently sold the family's home to cover mounting debts. He still owed money to numerous creditors. He'd also purchased, listen to this, a $20,000 life insurance policy on each of his children a month earlier, in addition to policies he'd already acquired for them the previous January. Halloween fell on a Thursday, and by Friday at 9 a.m., just hours after his son's death, he called the insurance company to inquire about collecting on the policies.
So who did he think he owed money to? Did you say that or not?
I haven't said that. Mounting debt is what it mainly says. Well, that's not even a part of what it
I was just curious because that was like a...
Like, I urgently need a ton of money right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The more questions the police asked, the more suspicion fell on him. And the summer before, he had actually called an acquaintance who worked for a chemical company and asked him, man, these people are bold, questions about cyanide, including what constituted a fatal human dose. Like, did he think this friend of his was just going to forget that he made this phone call when a few months later his child dies of this?
Back then, people didn't know how good, I think, detectives were. Like, they didn't know, these cases get solved all the time.
Yeah.
Because that was what year was that?
Yeah, mid-70s.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm thinking, did Ronald himself, was he either dumb enough or arrogant enough to think that when his acquaintance person through the news or whatever finds out that this child has died of cyanide poisoning, that acquaintance wouldn't remember the phone call that he had made?
Yeah. Poor planner.
Just before, that's one thing you could say. Just before Halloween, he'd entered a Houston chemical outlet and asked about buying some of the poison, but he left after he learned that the smallest package available was 5 pounds. Okay, just a heads up, if you are a chemical factory worker and someone comes in off the streets asking if they can purchase that chemical, and I just need a little bit.
Yeah.
It's cyanide. Yeah, I'm not going to need the 5 pounds. Who's buying 5 pounds of cyanide, though? Because they said that was the smallest, amount they could sell.
Yeah.
Are we just buying cyanide off the street?
Maybe you just mix it up with something farming, maybe, or something.
Pesticide, maybe.
Like a homemade pesticide back then. Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. 5 pounds of cyanide.
I don't know. But
what if it
I don't know. But I think that's my thing too, because then how suspicious is it when he's like, "Oh, that's way too much.
Way too much.
I just need really the one dose, However much I can fit into 6 pixie sticks. That's how much cyanide."
Terrible.
So even after being confronted with all of this evidence, he never confessed. He never came close. So, Silamander, this is going to get back to your point in the chats about Brian and interviews, okay? This detective says, I got him right to the line. An interrogation typically goes through stages. First, there's denial. Then you see the subject give up. He said, with O'Brien, I saw that give up. We'd been in the interview room for a while. He slumped forward and he started nodding his head like he's agreeing with me. I said, all right, now's the time to tell me. And he nodded some more, so I waited a couple of minutes. When he didn't say anything, I said, all right, Ronald, tell me. And he looked up clearly at me and said, tell you what. He said, and I knew then the moment was gone. He never got there. Tell us about that. About getting them there, you know what I mean? And then not.
That's where I think a lot of people make the fatal mistake. Because they get them there, and then instead of pushing, whatever pressure needs to be, if it's more not angry, but just more stern, or if it's to move in and put a hand on the shoulder and say you didn't mean to do it, the gun went off 13 times, there was nothing you could do about it. Okay. You know what I mean? That. And he's right. When he was there and he dropped his head or he dropped his body down. But it's almost like if you don't keep pushing, then they have a chance to kind of realize what they're doing, and then they stop. Now, that's not coercion or anything like that. That's just keeping the conversation going. Just like Silly confessed about stealing a candy bar when she was 10 years old.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, in the chat. In the comments.
I missed it.
But yes, so in interviews, yes, there's an art to it. So even when he says stages of interview, I don't get hung up on all that stuff. it's a normal conversation, but you start to feel it, and some of the body language people go, oh, that's definitely deception. Well, it's not always deception. It just means they don't feel comfortable talking about that.
Right.
But when people start to drop their shoulders and they start to drop their head, if you say something and they nod, like they're agreeing with you, they don't even realize they're doing it.
Okay.
You know, when you're starting to explain to someone, you know, you were there, you were driving, you know, so-and-so had a gun in his waistband, and they're shaking their head the whole time. Now, if I sat there and told you that, oh, last Friday night, you know, you were driving a car and the person beside you had a gun in their waistband, y'all were going to go and rob and kill somebody, you'd be like, what? You're crazy.
Right.
You're absolutely crazy. You don't sit there and nod. Yeah. You're right. But you walk people down that line. You do. You get them to talk about small things first and then lock them into an actual statement, a timeline. So it sounds like this detective was doing the right thing.
And he was new, you know.
Yeah. And sometimes that's people. Okay. I'm going off on a tangent. But departments often put a lot of emphasis on detectives who have done whatever, 10 years as a detective, and that's who they want on their homicide unit because they think years of service equals experience, and it is not
or
that way. Or effectiveness, or energy. People after 10 years sometimes are burned out. They don't want to do a 4 or 6 hour interview with someone who potentially killed somebody or is a witness and they're screaming and crying and that sort of thing. So sometimes a newer detective who has that energy, who has that interest and has been, you know, wanting to get into a homicide investigation for years, sometimes the best person to put in that room or wherever the interview is being conducted. But that whole idea of when you're talking and watching body language and getting people to explain their timeline, and then that timeline also is kind of what hangs them up too.
Okay.
Because they lock themselves into being there just like that. Like he's identified asking questions about cyanide, then not wanting to buy what sounds like a normal dosage or a normal bag of cyanide bag is 5 pounds. That's the smallest we sell. So
I don't know what's normal, but
I don't either. That's a good question about cyanide. Do you know how I first heard about cyanide? Cyanide, I mean. AC/DC. 30 D's done dirt cheap. I don't know. I was about 7 or 8, somewhere around there. I don't know. Sorry.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's true though.
Okay, so I'll finish up with this. And his initial appeal was denied in 1979. Not only did he kill his son for money, the judge noted, but O'Brien intended to commit other murders to do so. You guys, he was ready to kill all those kids. Kids that were his, kids that were not his, to cash in on the life insurance policy of at least one of his, if not both. And he was going to kill all his friends' kids. Or, yeah, all of the kids of his friend. When he intentionally distributed the 4 additional poison pixie sticks to the other children, the likely and predictable result of his acts was to cause their deaths also. This is from the judge. The horrific death of Timothy O'Brien would prove to be a singular crime, the only deliberate Halloween poisoning fatality ever documented. Okay? But this guy, Joel Best, who is a sociology and criminology professor at the University of Delaware, has studied, and he says that instances of October 31st candy poisonings and reported attempts to harm trick-or-treaters are so few and far between. But it had that echo chamber effect. You guys, growing up at a certain time, I remember my parents pouring out my candy bag if it were homemade. Couldn't eat it if it was homemade. Like, definitely the grandma who gave you the popcorn ball intended to put drugs in it. Right?
Yes.
Like, I think back and I'm like, what was wrong with everybody?
I think
if they had said like, we don't trust everybody's kitchens, or if everybody's clean when they make things, so we're not going to eat a stranger's food, that at least makes sense. But like, no.
I think there was no way to check stuff like that. So when you're at work, sitting around on a break, and somebody says, "Hey, did you hear about that case in Walla Walla, Washington?" who knows? And then they just start talking about stuff that's probably nowhere close to being true. But yeah,
so it's never happened
yeah.
since. Like, this was the only fatality
Yeah.
noted to at the time this article was written.
It was razor blades and apples when I was a kid.
It became razor blades.
That's what my mom was talking about. I don't really remember anybody giving out apples, but she would check the candy because
all the boxes had to be closed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We would go to my cousin's apartment complex. It was huge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'd have what felt like a 5-pound bag of candy. But yeah, I don't remember. I mean, maybe we got apples. I don't know. Those like apples, oranges.
Back in your day, you might have actually.
Apples, oranges, and bananas were my stock in a few years because they fill it up, so you don't have all that candy. Yeah.
So James is saying in the chats, what was the longest amount of time you spent interviewing a single person?
Oh. Okay. I talked to 3 separate gang members for 8 straight hours, bouncing between the different rooms, if that counts.
Okay.
So, that was probably my record, because you can only talk but so long. You have to start, something has to change in the investigation. You can't detain someone. Now, if you arrest somebody and read them their rights, they waive, and then you begin to do an interview and they want to keep talking, yeah, that's different.
When you did that, let's say between those, you said 8 hours between the 3.
Mm-hmm.
So when you did that, I don't know what that case was or how it turned out, but did the suspect that you anticipated breaking and talking first, was that the one who did?
No,
or were you surprised?
It actually was a drive-by shooting. All the right people got charged. One person actually did a false confession.
Oh.
He tried to say he was there when in fact he wasn't, and I could prove he wasn't because I had an outside source providing the information.
Okay.
That was like, I'm telling you, this person, and when they gave that information, I was like, well, this guy's in my head. This guy's trying to take the whole rap. So then I go back.
So what was his motivation for that?
Because he was one of the younger guys in the crew. So what I found out is it's easy to talk through some of the interview room walls. And so what was going on is 2 guys were talking through the wall just enough to be able to say, you got to hold this charge. So that guy, I ended up going back in there, and he wanted to charge. And I was like, no, I'm not going to charge. And this is why. And then I laid everything out. And then at one point I even said, hey, you can go ahead and throw it in that trash can now. And then he just puked it up. He was scared about a bunch of other stuff going on. But I had to bounce between the 3 rooms. And one of the guys in it was a very high-ranking gang member. And he did not really want to be part of that whole investigation, which he got lumped in. But he was not actually one of the guys in the cars in the shooter. So anyway, yeah, that was 8 hours. So it was buying, multiple fast food runs. That's what your team does. People got tired of me talking and interviewing, but we ended up charging everyone that needed to be charged. And then even later was able to prove that one of the guns was stolen. So anyway, yeah, 8 hours.
That's a long time.
The average is 4 to 5 probably.
All at one time or total?
Just like one person, one interview, one-on-one for 4 or 5 hours was usually the average interview with the suspect.
Okay.
When they're talking.
It's exhausting.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you get to start. Do you have any ghost stories?
I don't have any ghost stories. I reached out to my brother.
Okay.
I have heard nothing back from my brother.
So, do you want to tell his ghost story?
Yeah, I'll tell his ghost story. So, growing up, my brother loves Halloween, still does to this day. I don't like Halloween. I don't like anything scary. I don't like horror movies, some, but not the gross ones. But he swears up and down that he saw, well, 2 things. That he found a batter's helmet that he had hanging on the end of his bedpost.
Okay.
He swears when he was around 8 or 9 years old that in the middle of the night he heard something and looked, and the batter's helmet raised up on the bedpost and spun around. Now, as a kid, I don't know why he would lie about that, because it wasn't something cool and great and all that. So I fully believed it and was actually petrified to sleep in that room when we switched bedrooms as we got like a year or two older.
Okay.
He also would tell one that when we had bunk beds, when we were younger than that, when we had bunk beds, that he woke up one night and that he saw a skeleton figure crawling up the bunk bed.
Do you think that was a really bad dream?
I think probably now as an adult, yes. Oh, but as a kid, fully believed it. Also, one of his favorite movies was Return of the Living Dead. I think it's or Night of the Living Dead. I think it's Return of the Living Dead.
Was that's the sequel, right?
Yes,
Right, yeah.
That was in 1984, like the punk rock kids and stuff, and the cemetery and whatever. We live near a cemetery, like right behind the houses across the street. So after I saw that movie, I was absolutely petrified that entire graveyard was going to like come to life. And zombies were going to attack us. Also, I was scared to death.
That ever happened?
I was scared they were going to break out into Thriller. That was probably the worst nightmare. No, it didn't. And actually, it did not happen. But man, I was a scaredy cat when I was a kid. Though I don't like that stuff. When I was a kid, he loved it.
So, Davey in the chats is saying, BC, what's the most random topic of discussion you've ever had with a suspect?
Ooh. One of the better...
random.
Yeah, I would probably say music. I put a Blood gang member on to Bad Brains one time.
Which is punk, if you don't know.
It's punk rock, soul, hardcore band. But I saw the guy's little music playlist. And he was hiding it from his other gang member buddies. Because it was like System of a Down and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, everybody clown me if they know what I listen to. I was like, bro, I'm putting you on some Bad Brains right now. So we started listening to Bad Brains. And he heard them first. And he was like, I can get down with that. Yeah. And then I showed him a picture of them. Which, if for everybody listening, they're 4 black guys with big dreads, but back, if you listen to them, people assume for whatever reason, because it's fast, hard music, it's like these white guys from the suburbs or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, that's probably one of the more random questions. I'm trying to think if I ever talked about ghosts with somebody. So a lot of times, like my interviews and encounters were not always suspects. They were often with like informants or gang members that are providing information, or maybe witnesses and stuff. But that's some interesting conversations with gang members.
I'm sure of it.
Yes.
Heaven, the Sandbag Queen, is saying it's really interesting to hear this side of gang interaction now that I'm in the courts every day and reporting on criminal cases, including a lot of gang-related charges. Yes. She's out over on the West Coast.
What about you? What about you, a ghost? Are you gonna
talk? I don't. So an interesting thing, when I was a kid, I didn't really believe. I didn't believe in ghosts. I guess I just didn't think much about it or care much about it. But we lived in a kind of an old home, not like ghost old, just kind of old for the time.
Yeah.
And out on like 5 or 6 acres. And then at one point when I was probably, I don't know, 11 or 12, my parents built on like a little extension to the home. So kind of just like made a new kitchen, built on a bigger living room that we had lived there forever. And so once we did that, we'd sit in the living room, and the way the living room was faced, and that like the new extension portion of the house, is that if you were sitting on the couch, like looking straight at the TV, then also straight in front of you to the left was the doorway that would go into the kitchen, the new kitchen, or you could turn left and go into the old part of the house, right? The main house. So if you're watching TV, out of your left peripheral vision, you could see, like if my mom came from like the dining room into the kitchen, back and forth like that. And I started thinking there was more than a few times over the years, it wound up happening a lot, that I would be watching TV and then something would catch my eye. Like I would see movement from that dining room, the old part of the house, into the kitchen. I don't remember ever seeing it go the other direction. But when you look, there's absolutely nothing there. But it was to the point that your peripheral vision is terrible, and I don't think you would have ever been able to, you would have never caught this.
No.
But it got to the point that, like, I can't even say, it sounds silly to say, it's not that I even saw it with my eyes, but there was like the feeling of that I caught that it was like almost like maybe a white t-shirt or something. I don't know, just very plain. Definitely had the thought that it was a man. Definitely felt like a man. Also, definitely nothing ever moved or rattled or shook. There were no voices, no noise, nothing. Like that was the only thing, if that was even anything. And it would catch your eye. Anytime it happened, it would catch your eye easily and be gone. Well, I just didn't think anything of it. I thought I was either seeing things or had made it up or, perpetuated what I thought I was seeing, until I can't remember now who it was, but someone else in my family, my mother, maybe one of my brothers, someone else had said, have you guys ever seen, like when you're sitting on the couch watching TV, like this thing, like it feels like there's like a thing that walks through something. And then come to find out, most of us in the household had seen exactly that. And we all described exactly the same thing. So I still don't know. Again, it was like the feeling of a man never, and I was there often alone as I became, my teenager years and later on, like never felt threatening or dark or anything. And you didn't feel anything at all. It just, you either felt or saw that like walking through, or you didn't. Then, I've got older brothers and people like to say things just like you were talking about, and and we did used to find a lot of arrowheads. So there was there had been a pretty large like area of like Cherokee tribes in that area in Tennessee. And so as kids out having all that land over the years, we would find arrowheads often, and a lot of times we'd just go dig for them. My brothers had collections of them and shadow boxes and this kind of thing. So then of course they're like, oh, we built the part of the house on top of something that we shouldn't have, and this is like poltergeist. But it was never anything like that. But yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it definitely, we nicknamed him Bob. So we, over the years now, if you ask my mother and say something about Bob in the old house, and she'd know exactly who you're talking about. So yeah, I don't know. My brother, I could get him to call, but he has had he could fill the rest of this episode up with his stories. So take them or leave them, but he's got a lot of them.
I forgot. My mom, I made a note.
Oh, okay.
My mom and her friends would go to a little area outside of Wilmington, North Carolina, and go see what's called the Mako Light.
Oh, yeah.
So as a kid, my grandmother's friend Mabel would tell these ghost stories when we would go to the beach. And my mom used to talk about the Mako Light when they were teenagers. And they would go down. And for those listening, the story goes, this guy, Joe Baldwin, was working on the railroad, comes through near the Mako station, notices that the car is coming undone, like the
train car.
Joint, yeah,
hitch.
So he goes to try to fix it, and the carts end up colliding and severing his head, and that he's, then forevermore looking for his head with this light that swings back and forth. My mom swears when we were kids that they saw it. And there's all these accounts that people see the light. And then they pulled the railroad tracks up around 1980. Because I just thought like, man, I completely forgot about the Mako
We'll have to
light.
Look into that more here. Yeah.
Yeah, when we were kids, that was a big deal. One real quick, I do want to say, my brother. When we were kids, and my mom would work late, so we were latchkey kids. We'd sit at the dinner table, and the way I sat, I kind of faced the side door. The way he sat on the corner of the table, he faced the hallway that was behind me. So he was always, we'd make our beefaroni or whatever. We'd sit down, start to eat, and in the wintertime it gets dark, a lot earlier. And this fool would be eating, and like getting ready to take a bite, and then just like, oh God. And he would just stare like over my shoulder down the hallway. And I can remember being so scared I couldn't move. And he would just be like, no, no, no. And then he would get up and run out of the house, out of that side door. And I would be completely terrified. I couldn't move. And I would just be like, oh my God. And I would think it would be like some killer behind me, like Leatherface or something.
Now,
Horrible.
my brother did, hang on, I think we may have a caller here in a sec.
We may cold call him in a second too. He's probably racked out of sleep. Silly, he's gonna get on here at some point, at some time. We're gonna be talking with my brother.
So I have two older brothers, and the oldest of the two is 10 years older than I am. So, and he was great with me, but you've got to think when I'm, 7 or 8, he's 17, 18. And he would run through the house at certain times if he was feeling silly. And before I could do anything, I think we got us a caller.
All right.
Hello.
Hello.
You guys, if you're listening, this is Heaven, also known as the Sandbag Queen. So she's been a wonderful supporter of the show, of both of our shows since the beginning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Since the beginning.
Yes. Can you guys hear her okay?
Am I there?
Yeah, you're here.
Is
you're good. I'm just making sure they can hear you in the chats. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. It's earlier where you are, I think.
It
Quite a
is.
bit.
It's only 6:10.
Yes. Yes. It's
Yep.
it's not
Nice.
Heaven up late. Do you have a story for us?
I do, and it's funny because I don't believe in ghosts.
Okay.
So I completely forgot about this experience that I had when I was a kid. And so I grew up half of my childhood was in a trailer. I lived in a trailer park, and it was this tiny, tiny little trailer, and there were only 2 rooms in this little, sorry, my dog's barking. Let me go outside.
You're good.
So there were only 2 little rooms and a hallway and a little living room. It's very small. So my cousin was staying the night. Older cousin. She's like probably 8 to 10 years older than me, maybe a little bit more. And she was staying in my bed with me. And it was about probably 11 or 12 o'clock in the morning. And we had our hallway light on. Well, both of us popped up at the same time and saw the same exact figure. And it said, "Catch Heaven, she's falling." And then I almost fell off the bed and she caught me.
What?
And it was the craziest thing. We both saw it. We both heard it. And then she caught me. So it was really weird. And yeah, that's my story.
Well, and isn't it weird too, though? Like, okay, you both, corroborated the story. You both heard it. Mm-hmm. But it's funny, like something so, I'd say insignificant as falling off the bed, right? Like you're not going to sustain injuries or be hurt from that. But like whatever that was or whomever that was, in that moment felt the need to say that. That's super interesting.
Yeah, it was really weird. So that's the only one I can think of. But yeah, so I thought I'd share.
Well, thank you for sharing. Appreciate that.
You're so welcome.
All right, girl.
Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye. Davey said he's got some stories. Davey, do you have my number? Uh-oh. Who we got?
It's Davey.
What's up, man?
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Just same old, same old.
Yeah.
So, I got some stories.
All right.
First one, this one deals with my hometown where I grew up at. So, I grew up in a city that's really only claim to fame is prison.
Okay.
I grew up in the city of Chino in Southern California. It's home to the NA, and it's also the birthplace of the Aryan Brotherhood. Anyway, one of the neighboring cities is called Chino Hills, and it's where the rich people are. Well, at the top of the main hill in Chino Hills was this house. And we always referred to this house as the Cooper House. And the reason why it was called the Cooper House was because in 87, if I recall correctly, there was this guy who lived there who was just like, there were a series of murders that had happened, and they all kept on, they all kept tying back to like a similar area, similar location. And it just happened to be around this guy's house. Well, this guy would end up murdering, like, not just, you know, like a bunch of people, but he ended up murdering like a couple families.
Okay.
So they arrest him. And they, you know, he goes away to jail, and then he breaks out. And where does he break out and come back to? He went back to his old home and murdered the family that was living there at that time.
Oh.
And ever since then, his house, I don't know if it's still standing or not, but the last time I heard about his house, it had been condemned. And I don't know if they had torn it down or if it still stands. But there are still stories to this day of people who, when they go around that area, that they swear that they see little kids playing in the front yard, and it's like, you know, like 2 a.m. They swear that you can still see lights flickering on and off, even though the house has been abandoned and vacant for God knows how long. But that's the story of the Cooper House where I grew up at. My next story, it's not really a major thing, but my little brother. So him and his wife, they were on their honeymoon in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And my little brother, he does not believe in the paranormal. I do, only because of just what I've experienced, what I've seen. And you know, him and his wife, they're in their room and they're just, you know, just getting used to their surroundings, as you know, they're in Argentina. And my brother starts swearing that that there's somebody running around in his room, but he just doesn't know where. And yeah, he was texting me. He goes, "Hey, like, I swear there's somebody in my room running around, but it's like I go to look and they're not there." And I'm like, "Okay, like, what are they wearing?" And he was like, "I don't know. It's like a white flash." And I'm like, "Dude, take a picture of your room and just send it to me." He takes a picture and sends it to me, and lo and behold, there's like right in the middle a bright white orb. And that orb is like, you know, orbs are usually an indicator that there's a ghost or a spirit nearby. But the thing is, he took the same photo from the same spot, and the orb was gone. So he still can't wrap his head around that. And my next story, this is my little sister, and well, at the time it was her fiance, now husband, but they were on the Queen Mary. It's a ship in Long Beach Harbor, Southern California. Well, my brother-in-law, he, you know, didn't believe in ghosts, didn't believe in the paranormal. And one night, the night that they're on the Queen Mary, my little sister, just side story. My little sister is the one member of my family. She's always had a bit of I guess you could say, a sixth sense. She's the one of the family who can, like, she has that contact with the spiritual world, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
But for my little sisters, you know, paranormal, it's nothing new. She's seen it. She's even got pictures of it because one of her friends, oddly enough, one of her friends, the house that she lives in, well, it was the same house that her grandmother died in. And my little sister swears to this day that she still sees her grandma walking around that house. But anyway, my little sister and her husband, they're on the Queen Mary. And my brother-in-law, he's like, ghosts aren't real, whatever. And my little sister's like, don't disrespect them. And as he's saying this, he turns to his right. That's where their door to their room is. The door literally slams itself shut. And he's just, the look on his face, I would describe it as more or less, you know, he more or less dropped a deuce and needed a new. But he was, from that moment on, he never ever walks into a room and disrespects it. Whenever my little sister says, "Don't disrespect them," because they will let you know. And it's, but yeah. And my only paranormal experience, I mean, I don't know if ghosts are afraid of me. I mean, if they are, great. I don't mind that at all. But my only real paranormal experience happened when I was on Catalina. I went there with a friend of mine, and we were doing, you know, the casino tour on Catalina Island. And as we're walking up to the main dining hall, there's like a main little hallway corridor before you walk through the main doors into the main area where you would go, like, say, eat for dinner or whatnot. As we're walking up there, I'm in front of this pack walking towards these doors. A white flash just bolts right on by me, like spins from left to right. And I looked at it and I'm like, what the heck? And then I turn around and look at everybody else. Everybody else is looking in the same direction going, what the hell was that? So when it's a crowd of like 25 people all looking the same way,
right,
not sure what they just saw, that's usually a pretty strong indicator that everybody saw the same thing.
Right.
But yeah, those are pretty much the only ghost stories I have.
Well, that's a lot.
That's
of
a
them.
lot. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, that's crazy. Thank you for calling in, Davey. You got anything? You good?
No, I
Me
could
too.
talk all night. That guy's
Okay.
a good guy.
Yeah, no, me and BC could talk about all kinds of things for hours on end. So if you guys ever want to hear about, about bang bang ski ski cat cat, yeah, we can talk about that.
Hey, thanks for calling, buddy.
100%. Thanks for calling, Davey. We'll talk to you later, buddy.
All right, see you guys.
All right, bye. All right, I think we have one more. That is potentially going to call in. Let's see here. She said she would. My story was just that my brother would run through the house, turn all the lights off, and I didn't know where he was, and I was terrified. Okay, here we go. I think we have a Brittany on the phone.
Hi guys.
Hey.
Hey, first time caller.
Long time listener. How you doing?
I'm good. Just got done making dinner, trying to make the kids eat,
Oh
Mom's
yeah.
done.
Oh yeah. Well, what you got?
So my two stories that I'm gonna say, you can either believe me or not. So it involves my mother. So my mother died in 2021. And so the first story I have, I was working at Rite Aid 2 weeks before she died as a supervisor. And I hadn't closed the store yet on my own. And I was learning to close the store and stuff. And then she passed, and my store manager was understanding, and he was a godsend. Anyway, so the first time I closed the store on my own, I was stressed because I'd taken time off.
Right.
Because, I just lost my mom, and this is my first supervisor role. I've been lower management before, but never closed the store on my own. But I told my store manager, I was like, look, I'm ready. I'm gung-ho about this. And so I was very stressed, and I was so scared messing up, and I felt this warm presence over me. Like my mom would always do. Maybe I always thought it was my mom telling me, hey, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So, and I felt calm. Sorry, I have a crabby baby right now.
That's okay.
Yeah, toddler stage, right?
Oh yeah, I remember it.
I felt this warm presence, and I was calm after that, and I felt that was my mom.
Okay.
And my next story when it comes to with my mom is I got this necklace to put her ashes in. I actually keep it in my purse with me all the time, so I know I have my mom with me. So I keep my dad's dog tags in my purse too.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so I have both my parents with me. I know that. Anyway.
No, I think that's sweet. I like that.
And so, because my mom was a huge presence, she's the reason I have a house, and so it just she was my biggest supporter and stuff. So it'd be weird for me not to have a part of her with me. So that's why I had to get a vial, and I put the ashes in the necklace. And this is one of the rare times I was still working at Rite Aid. I closed at another store.
Okay.
And it came with a funnel and a little poker. Because I don't know if you've ever had put ashes into a necklace, but that's what it comes with.
Okay.
So you can, yeah. So I worked up this other Rite Aid, and I don't plan on ever working back at Rite Aid, so I don't mind that I'm talking about the store. Yeah. But anyway, so I closed the other store, and it wasn't a bad close, because I've closed other stores and some of them were terrible. And then I went to my friend's house, and I got home about 1 a.m, and the funnel was on my counter, and all I could say was, "Hi, Mom," because that's what I felt like. My mom was letting me know she was still there. Like, I don't know why. Because the thing was, it was in my kitchen. So when I put the ashes and stuff in the necklace, I put everything back in the box and kept it on my dresser. And I don't know why, even though my husband was drunk at the time, why he would mess with that stuff and put it on the counter. It was just the funnel, but it just, like, I automatically knew it had to be her.
Yeah.
So, and this was about almost a year after she had passed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she was letting me know that she's still around, you know. And like I said, you can either believe me, but I always, because my mom always told me ghost stories and stuff. She told me one of her things she dealt with, she'd gotten a book when she was either a teenager or an adult, and she put it in the fire because the ice glue, like, they glowed. And she was like, nope. And my mom wasn't a super religious person, but that scared the crap out of her, and she had to throw it in the fire. And so she always believed in ghosts and stuff, and, you know. But those are my two real kind of ghost stories that I feel, especially the funnel one, because I was just like, okay.
You just
and
knew,
I just knew.
Yeah. No, I believe that. I think our gut says a lot. Our intuition says a lot, and you get a certain kind of feeling. You know, it's not like you're saying every single day you had this, thought or feeling. So I definitely think that there's stock in that.
Yeah, I know, he's super giggly.
Well, we love it. Well, thank you for calling in. It was good talking to you.
I'm glad I finally got to call in and say, hey, what's up? Or howdy, y'all.
Yeah.
Howdy, y'all. There you go. See, it's going to sweep the nation.
Exactly. Like, I sent that one photo from the restaurant. I was like, oh my God, Andrea's here.
I love it. Oh man. All right, Brittany. Well, hey, thank you so much for calling in, and enjoy those little ones tonight.
Oh, I will.
All right, girl. Have a good night.
You too. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh goodness, that was good. We've got Greg and Beth are in the chat, so the bar is open with Beth and Greg. Check out their podcast if you haven't already. I think I'm winding down. Do you have anything? You want to? I've got weird ones, but I don't know if that's more spiritual warfare. They'll bring it down for the night.
Yeah.
Hospital stuff.
She actually reminded me of something you and I've talked about. And I was like, oh.
That one?
Mm-hmm.
I can tell it, but it's heavy.
Yeah,
we'll save that one.
What was your favorite costume when you were a kid? I was going to ask you that earlier.
Of my own?
Talked about it? Yeah, like when you were a kid. Oh, well. Yeah.
Got myself in trouble.
You don't have to tell that story unless you don't want to.
I'll tell it, and I'll change the names. Because none of it was bad. Right, it was just a matter of...
Yeah. You know...
Yeah, I'll tell it. Growing up, my very favorite costume probably was... I was a hobo. Well, that's what, we were kids. That's what it was called. But I learned years ago, and I still use it. Then I used it on my own children. But if you use... So heads up for you guys for Halloween. If you need it for yourselves or for your kids. If you need to make facial hair of any sort. If you use I'm sure there's many ways to do it. But if you use the Karo syrup, like Karo, that you would bake with. It's clear. It's incredibly thick. I'm sure you could do a molasses as well if you wanted a little darker, but it's thick. It's super sticky. And if you put that wherever you want the facial hair to be, and then coffee grounds, of course you can do stuff to the coffee grounds. If you want it to be gray, you can put baby powder or flour, what powder, sugar, whatever you got. Put it on the coffee grounds and put it on your face.
You're like a special effects artist.
It works really good.
Yeah,
it is.
Cool.
If you have hair like mine though, and it's not pulled away, it's horrible because it's constantly sticking.
Oh, yeah.
But it works really well. So when I was a hobo, I used it.
Yeah.
Also, one year, I will have to find the picture at some place. So if you can remember a time back in the, let's say, late 80s, maybe, the verbiage that we have for things now, we didn't have then. So we didn't have knowledge on certain things. We didn't have verbiage about certain things. And so, for instance, because it would be something you'd see at the time, for what it's worth, at the circus or in a book or whatever. And the idea, yes, or the idea of half man, half woman. But quite literally, because I was a child. And so I didn't know this is many decades before, the talk that we have these days and transgender. It wasn't anything like that. It was quite literally half man, half woman. And so I took, let's say the woman side of my body. My hair was curled and it was down, and I had heavy makeup on one side of my face, half of it. And I wore my mother's a dress of hers and safety pinned it in the back, and wore pantyhose and one of her high-heeled shoes. And then on the other half of my body, I wore my dad's, like a button-down shirt, a suit jacket, a tie, but I used safety pins in the back to keep it all, half and half. And then one of his big work boots, and I had my hair slicked back, and then the beard on that half of the face. So actually it was pretty incredible. Yeah. I did have to walk with a limp though, because I got on like one work boot and one high heel all night. But it was a fun costume. So fast forward that to many years later, I was working, at the time, I think I was working, it's before I went to pediatrics. It doesn't matter. And in a surgical intensive care unit. And it was leading up to Halloween. I was grown at this point, and I was talking to, one of our doctors about his kids, and what they were going to be for Halloween. And we had another coworker, sitting at the table, a female, and she was an awesome nurse and a good acquaintance of mine there. I enjoyed working with her, smart gal. And she was married to a woman on a different floor of the hospital. Okay. And that's about all I knew about her personal life. We didn't really talk personal stuff too much. And as I'm asking him about his two children, I remember their names still. This was many years ago, but this conversation has stuck with me. And he tells me what they're going to be for Halloween. And then we start, doing this, and we're reminiscing on Halloween's past and things that we had dressed up as. And I said, one year, and I was laughing, and I said, one year I dressed as, half man, half woman. And I go to start describing the look like I just did for you guys. And when I did, the doctor kind of dropped his fork, kind of, in awe, looking at me. And I was like, what? And my other coworker, the female across from me, kind of gathered her things and excused herself politely and walked out. And I had no idea what had just happened. And this is a crazy story. Then the doctor says to me, did you not know about her? And he names her, I was like, no, what are you talking about? And so he goes on to tell me, and then I talk with her at another point and confirm all of this. And I guess this was kind of common knowledge on the floor at the time. I was a little newer to that floor. But I guess when she was a child, it's a very rare thing, but she was actually born a hermaphrodite, which can happen. It's just not very, very common at all. And back when she was born, probably a decade before me, it just definitely was not anything that was talked about or discussed, or the psychological or biological ramifications of, kind of acting quickly at birth or whatever, to correct things. It's also a genetic condition, right? So there are other things that go on within the body, whatever, that can be maybe unhealthy or cause problems later on. And so she was physically born that way. And so when she was in elementary school, I guess her family told her that something, that she had something, I don't know, it wasn't cancer, but they told her she had something that she didn't have, and took her, in for surgery to remove the male portion and have her be a female, because that was just kind of the easier thing to do. Well, all of this only wound up being, it's a big deal on its own, but I guess Discovery Channel had done a giant, piece on this, and I looked it up, and sure enough, there she was with her family talking about it, because of just kind of later on as an adult learning what really had happened to her. And it was wild. But then now it's kind of like a running theme that I say, when I put my foot in my mouth, I'm the only person who will ever say I dressed as a hermaphrodite for Halloween and accidentally say it to her. All of those things are very rare.
Very.
But leave
very
it to
rare.
me.
But you're so sweet and kind, and I think that's what people should understand.
Yes, none of that was meant.
You were just
I was a kid, yeah, none of it. But to then say it to, what are the odds of all of that? But anyway, what was your favorite costume?
I only dressed up a few times in my life until we dressed up last year.
Dress up now.
Yeah, we knock home runs now. No, I only get to pick from Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Okay.
The Red Skull from Captain America, the villain. When I was 4, my mom waited until the last minute, poor thing, and That was the only costume that you could buy at Kmart. So I was the Red Skull, which terrified me. And then I was a ninja one year. I remember this earlier when I was a kid. That was probably the last year I dressed up. And really, the ninja was like a head wrap and a blue members only jacket and jeans. I mean, that was it.
So did you just look like you had on like a shiesty?
Yeah, probably. I probably looked not like a ninja. I don't even know that I had any weapons. I don't know. I kind of half-assed it that year.
Yeah.
My brother would always go all out.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Halloween just was. It's not my thing. But last year was. So now I've got a new love for it.
Oh man. Yes, it's fantastic. Again, if you missed it, I'll put it back up again. But Brian was Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs last year. Oh my gosh, this election. I just got a text and I thought it had to do with the show and somebody trying to call.
Yeah.
And it did say, in fact, that I missed a call, but it says Kellyanne Conway just tried calling you, but you didn't pick up. She left a message.
She was going to tell us a ghost story, apparently. Who is she?
She
I'm
was,
kidding. What are the odds?
God.
You have coincidences all the time. You and your coincidences.
That's what we call them.
What's the worst Halloween candy you can get in your bag besides that popcorn ball?
Dots. No, not dots.
No.
No.
Dots
The
are
one
good.
that's the orange and black wax wrappers.
Yeah. Nobody knows where they're made, where they come from. There's no print on them. They're just there.
What would you say is the worst?
Those are bad, but there was a time when I could eat those and kind of like them. I can't stand a bit of honey. The little things, rectangular things. Bit of honey is disgusting.
I can eat that.
Other than that, not big on candy corn. You know.
I don't like. I mean, I can eat candy corn, but I don't care about it. Like I don't have to have it.
Okay, Beth said chocolate covered raisins. I will definitely second that.
Oh yeah. Brian absolutely loathes raisins. I don't love raisins. I can eat if they're chocolate covered. I can eat almost anything, but
raisins.
Greg said apples with razor blades. See, he wasn't even here at the beginning of the show, but he's wrapping it back around.
It's all over the country.
Those are classic. That's a classic Halloween treat, Greg.
What was your favorite Halloween candy? Did you just say it?
Now or when I was a kid?
When you were a kid. When you like, what would be like? Gave me a.
Even if it was a candy that I didn't care about, if it was a full size bar because we went to like the rich part of town, then I was happy. I've always been a fan of a Butterfinger. When I was a kid, I loved Snickers. I like it now, but not the same. But Butterfinger still holds up for me. Yeah. Of course, a Reese's. But I like a Reese's Pieces too, and you don't see those as much.
Mm-mm. There's an old candy bar called Old Henry.
I know.
That was one of my favorite. Oh, I know you know. You try to act like you're all young.
I just said it like you were telling me to be a fact for the first time.
We're the same age.
Greg saying Twix. We're not.
No, Old Henry's were good. Gosh, they were good.
Did you like 100 grand?
Yes. Yeah. A couple years ago, I ate about 15 of those things in a row. The little bite sizes. And my arch nemesis was getting in my way when I kept digging into that bowl. In a round table. Yeah. And one of the detectives was like, I was hiding my wrappers in my
I believe every bit of what you're
Chinese takeout styrofoam.
I
was jamming the wrappers in there. It was a bowl of candy that somebody brought in, and I was killing it. And a very high-ranking person that I didn't like was getting in my way.
He almost ran over you in a truck this weekend. Beth says she just discovered 100 gram bars. They are so good because they're like chewy and caramel on the inside, but then that crispy wafer chocolate on the outside. Yes.
Yeah.
Those are so good. Greg says Charleston Chew, old man.
Hold up. I didn't eat those until I was a grown man. The Charleston Chew is like a marshmallowy chocolate thing or something.
Wait,
Right?
probably.
Yeah, I never ate those as a kid. I ran across them like as an adult at one point.
Bosco saying cowtails.
And those mallow cups, they're called. The
Yeah.
same thing. We never had those.
Yeah, we didn't really have those as a kid. Somebody at work had peanut M&Ms though, and like the tiny little packs,
Yeah.
And I had to get some yesterday.
I like any M&Ms, peanut butter M&Ms, kind of like Reese's, but they're a little bigger.
Yeah, it's like creamier peanut butter
it's
too.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Goodbar is good. Yes.
It is. I don't know. A Butterfinger still stands
Fingers good.
strong, but I think I prefer like the little mini ones now because I like the chocolate.
More of it.
Yeah. You got a bigger chocolate ratio.
We've talked about it, but did you them Chico sticks?
Oh yeah, I like Chico sticks. You like those, right?
I do. I just want like a little one right now, just a little bite. I don't want the whole. Those things are like a big old carrot.
So what is this? So Cupcakes and Cameos is saying her favorite old timey candy is bun candies. She says, I don't know if anyone has had those. What is that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the first thing I thought was a honey bun, but
I'm with you, Beth. I'm solid with this choice. Describe it for us in the chats, Cupcakes, because I don't think I know what that is. I'm also visual. I don't know what some of those kind of more obscure ones or older ones are, unless if I see the wrapper, I would understand.
Yeah. Do you know what the highest selling Halloween costume of all time was?
Highest selling Halloween costume of all time.
Like the most, I'm sorry. That's probably not the way to say it. But yeah.
Okay. Let me think about this. Spider-Man.
Bam!
Is it really?
Yes. Yeah. Very good.
Okay.
Yeah, which makes sense. At first, I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
But because all those
I say
movies,
because I have a kid who lived. I had, I think, 3 different Spider-Man costumes that all looked the same that were different sizes because he wore it from like toddler till he was whatever age.
You go back all the way to probably
to
the
grocery store,
70s,
everywhere.
80s, 90s. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's funny.
Yes, and then that's all. Oh, we didn't even talk about Detroit and Devil's Night Out in the 80s.
Would you like to?
I'll just say this. Some of Silly's people, I guess, up there, 1983, 553 fires were set throughout Detroit on the night before Halloween. The year after, 1984, 810 fires were set.
Good night.
Yeah, it got so bad that by 1985, they had to set a citywide curfew for anyone 17 and younger. From dusk till dawn, you staying in that house. Yeah, and then they had like 11,000 volunteers come in the following year to be like, yeah, we're shutting this down.
And what years was that?
83 and 84 seem to be 2 of the highest. But they call it, Devil's Night Out.
Right.
But then I thought about, like, when I was reading, I thought, as a kid, I kind of remember hearing something about that. But there's a Boss Tones album or a song called Devil's Night Out. But anyway,
The devil got me.
No, that's not it.
That's
your favorite Chips episode. So there was an old Chips episode where this
Drew sent it to us. What Say Drew?
What Say Drew from the Comm Center sent us a video from the old Chips TV series, the California Highway Patrol, and it's like the Temu version of Gene Simmons from Kiss, but it's really Danny Bonaducci from the Partridge Family.
That's terrible.
Is playing a satanic rock and roll star, and that's the song he sings. What the devil take me?
Devil take me.
Yeah.
Devil take me.
No, it's not Danny Bonaducci.
No, it's not Danny Bonaducci.
It's Ralph Malph. Ralph
Malph.
Malph from Happy Days. I'm sorry.
I think they're interchangeable, but yes.
They were brothers.
I was trying to find. We'll have to do it another time. Oh, there it is. Okay, you keep talking for 1 second because we're about to get off of here. But I want to show y'all something that is specifically for our Michigan folks.
Greg says that The Crow, I guess the movie, was based on all of that. The Devil's Night Out. And all that stuff.
Oh.
I saw that movie one time when it first came out.
Mhm.
I didn't see it after that, and I kind of remember it. I
Mhm.
remember it having a good soundtrack, maybe. I can kind of remember that.
Well, it's iconic for.
Yeah, but I don't remember much. I think there's a lot
Alright.
of shooting in it.
Okay, so we are about to hop off. But funny story, we were looking at what were we looking at a map for?
There's no telling. Oh, I don't know. I don't know geography, so there's no telling. We probably
I think I was trying to explain electoral college to a kid or something. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. So either way, we pull up like a blank map of the United States, and as we're looking, I was like, "That's Michigan, right?" And he's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "Do you see what that looks like?" And so we just look at the outline of it, and I immediately said, "That looks like the outline of Bart Simpson hanging his head forward." Now, this is going to be. Here's the deal: if you guys disagree with me, I'm going to send Sillimander something because she says I'm crazy. She says it doesn't, in fact, look just like Bart Simpson's profile hanging his head down. If anybody disagrees with me, I will send her something from our sponsor. But I'm about to show it to you right now. Look up there. Look up there. Look at Michigan and look at Bart Simpson and tell me that's not the same thing. I'll wait. Because the second... So, okay, we've got an agree. You guys, if you say no, you've lost your ever-loving mind.
I mean, you can even
To
see
the
the
color of his
collar,
shirt, his ear.
his everything, his hand in his
I
pocket.
have laughed so hard. And so that minute, I used one of our little editing things to grab a picture of Bart Simpson and throw it up there and drop his head down.
It was like you did that, and I could not stop laughing.
Agree.
I even posted it.
To the point that but you agreed first, Davey. I'm not going with your disagree. He said, as a supporter of Sillimander, he's legally required to say no. But first, he said, dude. That was David J. David J. Zach. David?
The fact that he said that means he agrees.
He does.
So everybody agrees. Because it does. I mean, that is to the point. Remember, we were like, that's almost unnatural that it does it that way.
Yeah.
But it is. So that's all I can say.
I'll send her something just because I love her, but not because this does not look exactly the same.
Just send a shirt
with this on it.
And I stand corrected. Silly said it's called Devil's Night, not Devil's Night Out. I kept saying Devil's Night Out because of the Boston.
That's like Girls' Night Out or Mom's Night Out. Devil's Night Out.
Devil's Night Out. Yeah, Devil's Night. Detroit, 1980s. Look it up.
Silly said she was into spiritual warfare, and all here for it. I might just call you and tell you this story. It's not going to be tonight. It's a little bit longer, but it'll bring us down from our high tonight. But I'll just say it's an interesting story from hospital days and something that I've never forgotten and never will. So you about ready to
I guess
take this show on the road?
Yeah. We didn't play Yahtzee.
We haven't played Yahtzee in a while.
Yeah.
All right, guys, if you haven't already, go check out. Again, like I've said, it's a fairly new company, so I don't even think they have. I've got to check and see. I'm not sure if they have an online presence yet or not. But Illicit Apparel, if you're typing in a Google search bar, include the words Daily Threads. Either way, the logo looks like this. So if you see that logo, that is our sponsor. So they've just got essentially merch stuff, right? So they've got like hats. I think they have sweatshirts. Mm-hmm. Do they have hoodies? I think they have that stuff, t-shirts and stuff. Yeah. But they've got, I'm a terrible salesman here, but they've got fun designs. And so, like I said, they were here on the East Coast. We are as well. And kind of a small company. We're a smallish podcast, so we just wanted to link up, and that worked out. And so that's actually where Brittany's getting her free shirt from tonight from us. If you go on Andrea Upload on Instagram and send me a message, tell me what we're going to be for Halloween. I'll put another picture up that's a little clue. I'll try to drop a couple clues in the next day. First correct guess is going to get something of your choosing out of that store as well. But yeah, so they actually are carrying also some night shift stuff and some disruptor stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yes. Yeah. There's some really cool stuff there. So check that out.
Yeah. We need to tell them just to make one shirt.
That's
just
the
that.
absolute best.
Just
if we can make just one, if they'll do that, then I'm down.
to pay like $500,000. Oh.
No, you listen. Everybody listen.
Oh yeah, this hat is one of them.
Oh yeah, okay.
I didn't think about it. Yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah, I'm terrible.
Night shit. You got a few on there.
On my shirt?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh, I thought you meant on the shirt I'm on right
on,
now. Okay, I got you.
On their website.
Oh, my stars.
We'll get better at it.
Well, either way, we love you guys and we appreciate you coming out and listening and calling in. Thank you for those stories. That was a lot of fun. We don't often get to do a whole lot of laughing on the show because we're talking about super serious stuff. So
yeah,
that's definitely something we enjoy doing, and we enjoy doing it with you guys. So thank you for calling. Cupcakes, goodbye, David J. Kind of thank you, I guess, for your contribution tonight, even though you're trying to get me in a fight. It was silly. We got Brittany Faulkner, got Silly Mander, got Davey. Beth and Greg came on. La Montagna.
Bosco.
We had a Bosco.
James.
We had Sandbag Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
James Barber. A lot of our buddies were in there
Blood.
tonight. Marine's Blood was in earlier. Yup.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we really appreciate you guys. And it was good talking to you. So happy Halloween. We will do a live on Thursday briefly just to say hey and let you see the costumes.
I keep forgetting it's Thursday.
It's Thursday. Yeah. Next Tuesday, I'll keep you posted, guys. We're considering if we can pre-record, great. If not, there may not be a show Tuesday just because that is election night. So we will be eating boiled peanuts and snacks and
you know what?
Watching election stuff.
I bet none of these rascals eat boiled peanuts.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
I bet Bosco does.
I got a $5 bet that says Bosco's probably the only person that
I guarantee you Bosco
eats
does.
boiled peanuts. Everybody's like, oh, we're gone.
Yeah, everybody's like, bye.
I don't know, maybe not.
Bye. He's saying on his Forever Road podcast, he's going to have a surprise on his show. And he does eat boiled peanuts, most importantly.
Yes, he does. Oh, Silly says she does.
Okay.
I wonder how they make them up there in the oven mitt.
Greg's saying to live stream it. And how Bart likes his peanuts?
Yeah, how's Bart?
Heaven says she does not eat boiled peanuts. She made it clear.
Man, James Barber said they're gross.
Just eating peanuts.
James, we're gonna have to have a talk, buddy.
Next time you come over, James, I'm making you eat some.
They're the best.
This house will smell like a gas station for days.
So good.
All right, guys. Hey, we love y'all. We appreciate you. Thanks for everything. We will see y'all hopefully next Tuesday. If not, it'll be 2 weeks, but it's election week, so it's hard to know. Either way, I will go on and say that we'll see y'all next Tuesday, and we'll keep that tentative between now and then. You want to tell the people good night?
Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night, y'all.